Many of you may be familiar with Adnan Akhtar, aka Harun Yahya's Atlas of Creation, and his now infamous use of a stolen photo of a fishing lure. Despite the notoriety of that one photo, it is only one of the many inexcusable errors Akhtar and his team of researchers have committed in both his books and online websites. Take, for example, this collection of fossil mammal skulls that he claims are those of modern species, which have remained unchanged since the beginning of life on Earth. Very little information is given about these skulls, other than a claim that they are modern species, and alleged age and location of origin. Underneath each photo are repetitious declarations that these fossils are no different than the species of today. Now, if what Akhtar claims is true, then one would expect these fossil skulls to match the more recent skulls of these species. But Akhtar has disingenuously not made such comparisons. We're simply expected to take his word for it. So let's make the comparisons ourselves, shall we? The study of skull anatomy is called osteology, and in order to correctly identify a species, genus, or order, scientists look for several key structural features of a skull, such as the shape, proportions, and relationships of the various bone structures, and the shape, kind, and number of teeth. For our purposes, however, I think it will suffice just to point out some of the errors that are glaringly obvious even to the average grade school child. Adnan Akhtar claims this is the fossil skull of a giraffe. And I don't think we need to elaborate that this looks nothing like a real giraffe skull at all. Adnan Akhtar claims this is the fossil skull of a giant panda. Note the differences in shape compared to the real panda skull, as well as the apparent plaster embellishments on the jawbone, with none of the contours that should be there. Notice that the molar teeth on the skull are very large and pointed, when actually the giant panda has broad, flat molars adapted for its more vegetarian lifestyle. Adnan Akhtar claims that this is the fossil skull of a gray fox. As you can see from the comparison, a real gray fox skull is more thin and refined looking, with a more straight and pointed snout, than this rather robust-looking skull, which looks more like the skull of a hyena and not a fox. Adnan Akhtar claims this is a red panda skull. I think there's no question here that this skull has too long of a snout and too robust of a lower jaw compared to the real red panda skull. Adnan Akhtar claims this is a wildcat skull. As you can see, this skull does not have the domed shape that is typical for members of the cat family. Besides that, the sagittal crest is too pronounced and the eye orbits are too small. Adnan Akhtar claims this is a lion skull. No member of the cat family has such a top-line distinction between the snout and the cranium. And it's obviously not a lion skull at all. I was in fact able to identify this skull. It's actually the skull of an extinct giant hyena, a prehistoric species that lived about 5 million years ago. Adnan Akhtar claims that this is the skull of a squirrel monkey. I mean, what can I say about this? Where are its eye sockets? Next one. Adnan Akhtar claims that this is the skull of a golden snub-nosed monkey. This is just as ridiculous as the fishing lure photo. First, this is not the skull of any monkey. All monkeys have certain common shared features such as broad incisors and forward-facing eye sockets with post-orbital bars. Second, this skull doesn't even match the shape of this monkey's face. This is the skull of an animal with a long, pointed snout. A snub-nosed monkey's nostrils are very close to its eyes, which is why it's called a snub-nosed monkey and not a long-snouted, pointy-nosed monkey. And it's no surprise this skull looks nothing like a real snub-nosed monkey skull at all. But the fun doesn't stop there, as Akhtar's matchmaking ineptitude isn't just limited to getting species wrong. Adnan Akhtar claims this is a tiger skull. 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 all of which are supposedly no different than a modern tiger skull. As you can see, not only do none of these match a real tiger skull, but they don't even match each other. And here's another example. Adnan Akhtar claims this is a lion skull. 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 As you can see, none of them match each other, let alone a real lion skull. Apparently, Adnan Akhtar barely has the skill level required to play a touchscreen bar game of Spot the Differences, let alone hold any claim to having a scientific background. He really has no excuse for this kind of ineptitude, as these are very basic identifications that even an amateur can learn. He's basically disqualified himself from any claims of scientific credibility, or having a driver's license for that matter, until he corrects his problem with his visual acuity. So, what animals are they, really? Scientists take no issue with the idea that mammals were around since the time of the dinosaurs, and in fact, many of the extant major orders appear in the fossil record dating millions of years back. However, most of these were mammal species of antiquity, species that went extinct thousands or millions of years ago, and not the familiar species of the present day. Another interesting thing is that most of the fossils in this collection are credited as coming from China, but the problem with that is, any fossil originating from China officially belongs to the Chinese government. So any Chinese fossil outside of China that has not been obtained by special permit is either a fake or has been obtained illegally and probably through questionable sources with unreliable information. Here's an online seller who has also incorrectly identified a fossil from China. In fact, smugglers have been caught trying to smuggle fossils out of China to deliver to foreign buyers in other countries, such as the United States and Turkey. The Chinese government is now considering imposing some rather severe penalties for smuggling fossils out of the country. Ironically, Akhtar himself points this out with regard to the well-publicized National Geographic Archaeoraptor fiasco.
It's like radio.
Judging from this previous example, these fossils are most likely those of now extinct prehistoric species, with maybe a few fakes thrown in. The dates are most likely made up by either Akhtar or his sources. It truly is a shame that these priceless artifacts of prehistory are being used for such dishonest purposes. Now, to his credit, Mr. Akhtar loves animals, appreciates nature, and writes poetic reveries on the beauty of the world. So he's not a completely bad guy. So please, Mr. Akhtar, just stick with the florid prose and the cute kitten videos and stop pretending to be a scientist. And maybe you should consider a new career. Maybe you should go into fashion or infomercials for cosmetic surgery instead.